What's up this morning? So, I'm gonna do a little division of some partial quotients. If you watch my last video, we kind of set you up to understand what we're gonna be doing here. We're gonna use a multiplication chart to actually do our division. You don't have to be a division expert if you can use your multiplication chart. We're gonna use a method called partial quotient. And that's exactly what you're doing, honestly. A quotient is, for example, if we're talking about this first problem, 720 divided by 8, your quotient is your actual answer from your division problem. We're just going to find them in parts, or we're going to find a partial piece of the quotient. We're going to go piece by piece until we can get to 720 using our multiplication. So the goal is, again, to make that 720 turn into a 0 by taking away, and we're going to use multiples of 8 because we are dividing by 8. So let me kind of get the screen set up here. Zoom in and then put the picture so you guys can see the multiplication chart as we go along. So bear with me here. Okay, here we go. So draw my line. So again, we're going to draw this line to separate what we're actually using to take away from our 720. Because remember, our 720 is our total. So we're trying to figure out, if we divide it by 8 or break it up into 8 groups, how many groups are going to be in it. How many is going to be in each of those 8 groups? So if you look at the multiplication chart, I went down to 8. If you want to, you could go all the way to the biggest number you know, which is 96. And what you can do is say 8 times 12 is 96. But for this case, I'm going to use 8 times 10 is 80 because look, our 720 has a 0 at the back. I know the 80 has a 0 at the back. I know the subtraction is going to be a little bit simpler with the 80 versus the 96. The 96 is going to make me regroup. So I put my 10 out there because look, if we look at our multiplication, 8 times 10 is 80. So we're going to use that. We're going to do our subtraction. Real simple, just like we were doing the traditional long division method. So, and you really continue this process, and you see once you do your subtraction, you come down from 720. Now you're at 640. So you're getting closer to 0. So the goal is for you to actually get that number right there, your dividend, and actually get it to 0. You can keep going with 10 if that's what you're comfortable with, and just 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. You keep subtracting 80 until you have completely gotten to 0. For me, that's a little long process, and I understand multiplication a little bit deeper. So what I know also is I can double that 10. So if I double the 10, which is 8 times 20, we get we get 160. We know that because 80 times 2 is 160, and then we just double our 10. 10 times 2 is 20, so that's how we got the 20 and 160. So now we're going to double that again, since we got 160, and we know that we're trying to get rid of 400. I'm going to double it again. So if I double 160, it goes to 320. And that's 540 because I doubled the response. So now we get 320, and now we just got 80 left. And we know what 80 is because we did 80 first. 80, we got to use 10. If we do 10 times 8, it gives us 80. And it gives us 0. So now all you do is add up all the numbers that you use to break down your dividend. And all those are what we call our partial quotients. We're going to add them up, 0, and then we got 4, 1, 2, 1, 1, and that gives us 9. So 90. So if you multiply 8 times 90, if you look at your multiplication chart, if you go 8 times 9, 8 times 9 is actually 72. Look at our dividend, it's 720, so 720. So again, if you were looking at where I got these numbers from, it's a good place to look if you look at the multiplication chart. Let's try another example. Again, you may not understand these the first time we do them, and that's okay. Stop the video, pause it, rewind, all that good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna get this set up here. All right, so, okay, we're still working on another example. We're gonna do this 544 divided by 8. You know me, I gotta get my coffee in. So, again, got my multiplication sheet. Look at the 8. We're gonna start breaking down a little bit more of how we're getting some of these. So look, we know from last time we used 8 already. So again, we know 8 times 20 is 320. If you go to your multiplication chart, if you go, oh, I made a boo-boo, guys. I messed up. I'm gonna have to erase that. 8 times 20 is not 320. 8 times 20 is 160, guys. I knew it was something I'm doing wrong here. So what I'm gonna do is 8 times 40 is actually 320. So if you look at the multiplication chart, 8 times 4 is 32, which is the first two numbers of that. And then we just added a 0. We added a 0 to 8. Added a 0 to the 4 to make it 40. Added a 0 to the 32 to make it 320. And what we did for that operation is multiply by 10. So if you look, we're gonna do the same thing. We got times 20 is 160. And we just do our subtraction. So again, all we're using is using our multiplication chart. And sometimes we multiply by 10 to make our number a bit larger so we can go quicker. But we do the same process here. This next example, I'll go into a little bit more detail so I can show you exactly where we're getting these numbers. So look at the 6. With the row of 6s, we're trying to get as close as we can to 312. Again, we know if we get there. Okay, quick. Let me show you about the 8 though. Look, that's where we got the 160 was from the 16, and that's where we got the 320 is from the 32. You got that? Cool. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing with the 6. So if you look at the row of 6, we're trying to get as close as we can to 312. Again, we know if we find something that is relatively close, so for example, we got 31 for our first two numbers. If we can get close to 30, or get close to 31, we can multiply by 10 and add a 0 to the end. We know that. And look, 6 times 5 is 30. So what we can do, instead of just times 5, we can do times 50, which 5 times 10 is 50. So we're just gonna multiply our answer, 30, also times 10, which would give us 300. So we're gonna put that out to the side. You could have used 66 and kept going like one by one, like 11. You could say 11 out there and do 66, or you could actually do 12. We have to readjust here. So if we look at the other side of the multiplication chart, because you can't see my 12s up here, I didn't put the picture of the last row. So we're gonna look at 6s from the top row. If you look at that, and then go all the way down to the bottom, which is 6 times 12, you get 72. So if I put that 12 out there, 72, and we would do our subtraction just like last time. 2 times 2 is 0, and then we gotta regroup because we can't take 7 away from 1. And then we get 11 minus 7 is 4. And 2. So that is 240. So we could keep going. Minus 72, minus 72, minus 72. That is a way. You can do it that way. Not saying that it's not a wrong or a right way. But what I will say is that it's just going to take you a bit longer if you do it that particular way. Me personally, I think I would go with the first method I was telling you about, with trying to find something that I can multiply by 10 and get to my number a bit quicker. So let's look at that again. So again, if we look at that 6, we go down and we see 6 times 5. And 6 times 5 is 30, guys. So 6 times 5 being 30. Again, I know I can take the 5 and the 30, just multiply them by 10 and add more value to it. And then it won't take me as long. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so what we're gonna do is look at 312. We got that 30, all right? Remember 30. Look at the first 2 numbers of that one, 31. Pretty close, right? So what we want to do here is, again, we got 50. We know that 6 times 50 is 300. And look, we only have 12 left. And we know, how do we look at our row of 6s? Do we see 12? We see 12, and that is 6 times 2. So let's do 2. And we got 12 here. And we're going to do our minus. That'll take away. Again, this is where that 30 is where I got the 300 from. I just times 10 and made it 300. Times 10 made 550. That's where I got that from. So 5 times 10 is 50. And 30 times 10 is 300. Sorry guys, a little bit of nose sneezing this morning. And then you just add those guys up, man. 52. So you don't have to be an expert at this. If you can use your multiplication chart, you can knock these division problems out. All right, so let's do one more example. Let's do this 4. So for this one, it's going to be a little different. We're going to we gotta look at the 4 column. So I'm gonna use that in orange. So look, our first 2 is 100 or 10, 2 numbers, right? So look, 4 times, how do we get to close to 10? 12 is too big, so we stopped at 8. Got 8, and then that's times 2. So again, what are we gonna do? We're gonna do our times 10 again. So our 2 times 10 is 20. I wrote my 80 in the wrong spot. Remember 80, that's the number we're trying to get to. 20 is on the outside, so 80, sorry. 4 times 2 is 80. 4 times 20 is 80. So that's how we got our 80. And we do our subtraction in 28. So you go down our row and look, 28 is 4 times 7. So you do your 7, 28, 0. So add those up. 27 is the answer. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I know you guys are amazing. You're going to figure this stuff out. Again, don't get discouraged if you don't get it the first time. We all need some time. You're amazing. You're a genius. You're wonderful. You're smart. Believe all that. but it takes some time. I do these a little bit faster because I've been doing them for a long time. So don't get discouraged. So again, if you're talking through this, make sure that you understand that, of course, you can multiply those by 10 to make your numbers smaller. But again, if you're not comfortable using that, you can simply use the multiples of 10 if you need to. You could have done 4 times 10 is 40 instead of the 80. You could have did that whole process and just did minus 40, and it would have took you a bit longer, but it's on the multiplication chart. 4 times 10 is 40. So you could put your 10 out there because that's what we're going to multiply by. That's going to be a part of our quotient. And then that's going to allow us to take 40 away. And we could have just kept moving down the list. 40 times 40 minus 40. And we would eventually got to 0. Instead of 20 and 7, we would have had 2 10s and a 7, which would have still given us 27. So no change in our answer, but just one additional step. But if that's what you're comfortable with, please do that, use that. All of that is amazing. Oh, shit. What am I waiting on? I thought this was moving.